Welcome to the Cannabis Enlightened podcast with Dr. Leroy, brought to you by March and Ash at marchandash.com. I'm Chris Cantori, and it's my pleasure to introduce you to your host, Dr. Leroy.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Cannabis Enlightened with Dr. Leroy. And we are extremely fortunate today to have an authority with us to talk about cannabis from the standpoint of entrepreneurship. Christy Lee Kelly has been in the cannabis space for several years and has had many successes and maybe not so much success, but she's going to talk with us today about her background and her journey in cannabis and pretty much bring us up to speed with where she is right now. So without any further ado, Christy, you want to come in and introduce yourself?
Hello, everybody. My name is Christy Kelly, and I'm happy to be here today. I think it's really right the way that you set up this that intro, Dr. Leroy, because you said as an entrepreneur, there have been successes, and there have also been some times where there were not successes, and that's the journey of entrepreneurship. It's a lesson in humility as much as it is a lesson in how to channel the most aspirational and functional aspects of your personality and build teams around you that are doing the same so that you can work towards common goals. So it is 1,000% right to think about entrepreneurship both as the journey, the stops and the starts, as well as the ultimate goal that you are striving for, whatever that goal is.
And you mentioned something that one word that is very important. I don't know if a lot of cannabis entrepreneurs think about this, but you mentioned the word teams. So I assume you're talking about people that work with you.
That's generally the Merriam-Webster definition of the word, or you could also use Microsoft. Definitely, I'm just kidding. Absolutely. Anyone who is trying to achieve some degree of success and is able to do it alone is absolutely a remarkable person, but they are a minority in a world where interdisciplinary functions and skill sets are an essential part of creating and building a successful and meaningful business that has some longevity to it.
Okay. And
the idea can come from an island of one, but to really be able to figure out what is necessary to get to the end goal, it requires typically people with different skill sets and even differing degrees of expertise. You know, some experts and some people who are willing to learn, and that all has to kind of come together in the final recipe.
Okay. So we'll come back to that, I think, in a little bit. Let's talk about Christy Lee Kelly as she started, or maybe even before, working in the cannabis space. What were you doing prior to cannabis?
Prior to cannabis, I was a very, I was in the marketing and advertising space. I was based in the Washington, D.C. area, which is a place I know very well because it's the place that multiple generations of my family had planted roots prior to me even being there. And it's a place I still consider home. And in that capacity, I was fortunate to be a part of boutique agencies, startup agencies, in-house marketing, marketing for government agencies. And then because DC is such an interesting place where people of varying backgrounds and ethnicities and education levels tend to congregate, at least at that point in my life, it was a very thrilling place to meet people who were just looking to figure out how to make their ideas come to life.
Okay. So what made you decide, or what turned you in the direction of cannabis?
There are a couple things about, everyone always has a story, and sometimes an element of that story is being at the right point in history, at the right time in history. And so for me, I think that there's a little bit of that, because I had grown up in a time where the dot-com boom had resulted in success for people all around me. And I'm not a tech person. I've never pretended to be a tech person. So when this dot-com boom happened, I remember looking around and thinking, if only I knew a little bit more about that, but it's really not, I don't see a place where I can really fit in organically. Probably not the right attitude, but it's the one I had at the time. But then as I watched people that I knew achieve incredible levels of success, it occurred to me that perhaps I had made a mistake, and that perhaps I had been a little bit hasty in dismissing my ideas or capacity, but more importantly, in appreciating the value of what was before me. And so I made a commitment to myself that if ever there were another opportunity, another growth industry that came about in my lifetime, that it would be something that I would pursue. Cannabis legalization, starting with medical, ended up being that new growth industry for me, and for many people who were in similar positions as me, who were looking for something that had never been done before. And it also came at a time where, on a personal front, I was really looking to add value in my own life. I was looking to find meaning in the work that I did, and while having philanthropic interests and working from afar in that capacity was helpful, there was a part of me that was really hungering to have more tangible benefit in real time, and to kind of be on the ground. And so these two need states happened at the same time as the cannabis industry in Colorado was just starting to form. And in 2009, my husband and I, made a decision to start to examine, explore, and pursue fairly aggressively the opportunities in the cannabis space, along with some other friends who became our business partners in this journey.
From DC, you went to Colorado because of the opportunity for cannabis?
Yeah, and a lot of people thought I was totally bananas, because the opportunity that I had in DC was quite an opportunity as well. My mentor in the space, in advertising and marketing, had been very clear about her intentions, and we were me and a small group of people were part of the leadership of an agency that was very much intended to be something that I would be able to take over at some point in the future. And so leaving that behind meant not only leaving the business opportunities that I had worked really hard for in the first part of my career, but also multiple generations of family and friends, and a very deep system of support. And we did that, sacrificed it, and packed our bags and moved to Colorado so that we could pursue the cannabis industry and see what it was about. And we kind of figured, hey, there's never going to be another time like this, so let's give it a try. And that's what we did.
Fantastic. So as you got to Colorado, how much did you know about the cannabis business or industry? Had you researched anything with respect to growing, dispensary, products, cannabis products? Was that something that you had done research on before entering into the business?
We did what research we could, but let's also take a step back in time and remember there were no academic courses about cannabis. There were no podcasts about cannabis. There were no consultants to help with cannabis. In fact, the industry had largely existed in the illicit markets and in the shadows. And so the concept of legitimizing was actually quite revolutionary in the sense that there were some people who were very, happy the way things had been going, and then other people like myself who thought, hey, now here's something that we can really do to make a difference, make an impact on not just the cannabis space and the human impacts of it, but let's also look at the societal impacts and the criminal justice impacts and the historical impacts of being a part of something as momentous as this. And so there weren't a lot of places to find real information. The information that was available was, I would say, not academically rigorous and not always scientifically endorsed. And so, there was a lot of test, learn, and refine that had to occur, both on the operations side and the business side, as well as on the actual cultivation of the plants.
So as you started, were you first from the medical side, or was it medical and recreational when you started?
Colorado was the first state the first place in the world to tax, regulate, and license cannabis business. There were other states such as California that had decriminalized marijuana and permitted some form of medical, but there wasn't a commercial way for someone aspiring to be in the business of cannabis to actually do that until Colorado. And so it did start as medical, and then Colorado also became the first state, only by a time zone glitch, because it was Colorado and Washington in the same year, in the same election, became the first state to legalize adult use cannabis. And so Colorado has often been a state that gets looked at because it's got the most mature, regulated, taxed, and licensed market, the most transparent market for other states to look at to date, to not only see what went well, but also to learn from the things that didn't always go so smoothly in the first one or two rounds.
Okay, so here we are. Christy Lee Kelly is in Colorado, and cannabis is legalized medically and recreational. And you want to get in the business. What did you do? What was the step A, or the first step you took?
The early days of Colorado, people often compared to the Wild West. There were standalone home grows, a couple of maybe standalone small warehouse grows. There were mom and pop storefronts that were in certain places, but there wasn't a lot of organization or any sort of a clear system yet. And so Colorado saw a need to rectify that situation, and that's where the regulatory licensing and taxation model came about. So what did we do? First we wrote the business
you
plan.
had to get a license.
We found the money. We had to write the business plan. We had to capitalize the business. We started cultivation. There wasn't a licensing process when we started.
Okay.
We did not have the option to have a license till we were in the second, or till about a year into operations. And at that point, there was a very complicated process of disclosing financial history, criminal history, business information that you would expect with any sort of a licensing process, and and a new set of rules and laws under which we as operators were expected to abide by. And one of the most important things in this new set of laws was that the state of Colorado wanted vertically integrated businesses. And so what I just described to you in our initial days was a cultivation operation. By virtue of the fact that the laws demanded vertical integration, the first thing we had to do before we applied for licenses was find affiliate storefronts to partner with so that our vertically integrated application could be submitted.
And when you say vertically integrated, what does that mean?
Great question. Vertical integration refers to the concept that the entire supply chain from cultivation to sale to customers is controlled under one commonly owned business entity. At least that's the way it was defined in Colorado. And so if you grew it, you had to also have a relationship where you could sell it. Most of the businesses that started up in Colorado during the Wild West days did not have vertical integration. And so what resulted was the rules and the laws were disclosed, the application process came out, and the timing of the application was such that there were, I think I want to say the laws came out in June, the application was due in August. So in under 3 months, you had to find partners, sign partnership agreements, either purchase, acquire, merge, or do whatever to create a formal business relationship with people that you had never intended to work with, and then together apply for an application or apply for applications and licenses with the state.
So it was very risky, it sounds like. I mean, because a lot of this, a lot of the process you didn't know, but in addition to not knowing the process fully, you weren't fully aware of or knew about the partners that you were going to have to work with.
Right, and I think anyone who spent any time going through any sort of a courting process, a vetting process with prospective partners knows that a couple months is the bare minimum that you would entertain for getting to know another party and do proper due diligence. There wasn't really adequate time for those kinds of conversations to take place because the actual application, after you form the partnership, took time to put together too. So under extremely stressful situations, many Colorado operators formed what we called at the time forced marriages. And those forced marriages were how we were able to procure those initial licenses. But as I'm sure you can imagine, once those licenses were obtained and once these parties started to work together, it was not uncommon for these forced marriages to end in divorce. And so there was a lot of legal activity because people had no choice but to form these partnerships in order to pursue the licenses. But in the actual operations of post licensure, it became clear that there are different personality types and different businesses that would be more successful, and so people had to do what they needed to do to align with the proper partners that shared their goals and their vision. And so there was a little bit of reshuffling of the deck for many years thereafter.
So in concept, it probably felt like and sounded like a good idea to have a vertical integration in the beginning. So whoever was growing was also involved in the sale. However, in reality, it sounds like what you're saying, the people that grew didn't always have the same idea from a standpoint of cannabis or from a business standpoint as the people that were involved with selling from the dispensary.
That's right. And I think that maybe some of the people that even were submitting applications might have had some knowledge of that, but we needed, there are plenty of times where I heard people tell me, well, we had to get the license. And so, we knew it might not be a forever relationship, but we would have to sort that out after the fact. Remember though, this was a very different time and a place when these licenses when we were in this application process, it was very early in cannabis regulation and legalization, and there was a lot of uncertainty. In fact, the Obama administration had characterized Colorado as the quote unquote Colorado experiment in that the processes that Colorado employed might help to inform whether legalization of cannabis was something that would work with other states or with the federal discussion about legalization. And so there was a lot of pressure to make sure that the federal priorities were embedded into the way that the Colorado model was constructed. And what that meant was the federal government did not want to see criminals, cartels, or illegal money mixing in with the regulated licensed market. And in recognition of that, the best way to hold businesses accountable, if you're if you're a state government trying to figure out how to regulate a brand new industry, is to hold the licensee accountable to the entire supply chain. Mm-hmm. So there was a very reasonable thought process that went into the construction of those laws for that reason, because Colorado did not want to create a licensing scheme that was suddenly going to then invite federal intervention, because that also would have been a pretty big mess. So there was a lot of concern, and just very restrictive method of initial licensing in Colorado was really born of an understanding of all of the varying and competing concerns that had weighed into what cannabis legalization could look like. So we can look back at it and say, oh, it was, really shouldn't have done that. But I think that operating in real time and knowing what the competing goals were, that it actually, there is a method to what was going on. It might not have been the right method, but it was a method.
Now that's a great place for us to take a quick break, but don't go anywhere, because when we come back, we'll have more with our guest and Dr. Leroy. You're listening to the Cannabis Enlightened podcast, powered by March and Ash.
Anne-Marie Schubert brings her years of experience to the new podcast, Inside the Crime Files.
Oh, this podcast is going to reveal the innovative things that were done to either solve crime or the innovative things that came out of crime. It's really going to be extraordinary.
Subscribe at InsideCrimeFiles.com.
American democracy's good, but we can make it better. The National Association of Nonpartisan Reformers includes organizations across the country who are working right now to build a better democracy by opening primaries, implementing safe, secure voting systems, reducing corruption, and increasing transparency. Listen to our weekly podcast, How to Win Friends and Save the Republic, to hear updates from the latest movements in the democracy reform space. Subscribe and learn more about us at nonpartisanreformers.org.
Welcome back to the Cannabis Enlightened podcast. I'm Chris Cantore, and here's more from our host, Dr. Leroy Brady.
Okay, so to give this some type of context, and you kind of did when you talked about the Obama administration, what year was that that you started?
Business was formed in 2009. Licensing applications were, so the laws passed that defined this particular operational system in June of 2010. And then the applications for licensing in Colorado were due that August of 2010. And so there was a lot of rapid change that was happening in that time period. And fortunately, we had talked about how Colorado was sort of the grand experiment, and everyone looked to Colorado to see what would work and what didn't. Most other states did really recognize that pain point of forced vertical integration. And so most states that you see today permit vertical integration, but they also don't stipulate that a specific business structure is necessary in order for people to be successful. And then there are some places where you cannot apply for multiple license types. You can only apply for a cultivation license type, or a sales location license type, or a processor license type, for example.
Got it. Understand. So let's move it up to close to where we are now with respect to Christy Lee Kelly in your journey from 2009 to 2021 today. So what's happening today? Or maybe you can talk to us about the different companies that you've started and you've been involved with.
Oh, goodness gracious. Well, in Colorado, we had a group of medical and adult use cultivation licenses. We had corresponding processor licenses, and then we had a mix of medical only stores and med AU. And then I also have, I've got interests in other states. So Missouri, California, and then most recently I'm in Michigan here starting another round of vertically integrated businesses in the Detroit area.
Now, Christy, this is most interesting because you're like 12 years into the business, 12 to 13 years in the business, I guess, from 2009. Guessing on the numbers. But not only did you start in Colorado, but as you just indicated, you've been in several other states, and even right now you're in Michigan. You're not in Colorado. Now, is that what is that a result of? Is that a result of you wanting to branch out, or is it a result of those states or other companies knowing about Christy Lee Kelly and saying, "Hey, can you come and help us?"
The cannabis industry has evolved a lot like the alcohol industry post-prohibition. And so what that means is that there are state-specific programs that are coming out. There is probably, general understanding that at some point, this patchwork of state programs is going to result in some federal oversight, but that's not where we are today. And so in order to really stay current with what's happening, you need to spend, it's important to see what's happening in, like if you're looking to have a domestic footprint in the US, you assess the opportunities that make the most sense for you, your relationships, and what you want to do with your life, and then you kind of go with it. I've done a lot of consulting all throughout the country, in many more states than the ones that we just talked about. And it's given me a real opportunity to understand where the growth potential is and where perhaps I see the most interesting things happening. And I really feel that, when you look at a state like Michigan, by population and market size, it's the top 3 market in the United States. Colorado and California are right there too. And so, when you look at that footprint and you look at the available opportunity, those are exciting things for entrepreneurs to look at. But there's also a lot of other things that go into the mix. If you're a new entrepreneur and you're looking to do something, we talked earlier about teams and the importance of being able to pull people who you trust around who can complement your own skill set. Well, for me, being in places where I have relationships, I've worked with people before, I have some sort of a network is really helpful. And I think that you would find that there are many other people who have concentrated their efforts just on the East Coast or the upper Northwest or just in California. And all of those are very reasonable things for the people who made those decisions because of the fact that they are making decisions based upon their own networks and access to the resources that they need to make their business successful. It's not about what I'm doing, and it's not about what someone down the street is doing, although you should always pay attention to what your competitors down the street are doing. It's about what makes sense for you, your resources, and your life. A lot of people don't want to relocate across the country over and over again. I happen to think that's kind of a fun adventure.
So now you brought something very interesting into the mix it is apparent in what's happening to you because you started off, I see a DC, Colorado, and now Michigan, that in this space called cannabis, you very well may have to relocate once, twice, three times, depending upon the opportunity. Is that correct? Or depending upon your passion in the industry?
Well, I certainly have, but I know plenty of people who have been very effective maintaining a home base in whatever state they live in, whether it's Pennsylvania or Colorado or California or wherever they may be, Washington. There are plenty of people who make the choice to stay in the place where they are, and they have tremendous success there. My quest for new experiences is really what I think, keeps it kind of fun and interesting for me. But that, again, is a very personal thing. There are people who have responsibilities, family, kids, that this concept of relocating and uprooting doesn't work for everybody. I think it's fun. Not everyone agrees with me. And there are ways to do it both ways. There are very successful multi-state operators who have built and scaled their operations to a point where they can really oversee all of those operations from a single location and just travel occasionally to the other places where they have a presence. But I think it's just really helpful when you're in a startup business or you're in an early stage business to do as much as you can to transfer all of the knowledge and information that we have obtained over the years to the teams that are going to be running the company on a go forward basis, to work with them and hear and see what they're seeing on the ground. And then once the business is stable, move on to the next one. Again, that is a very different philosophy. Some people prefer to be hands-off. Some people prefer to be hands-on. As I told you in the very beginning, one of the reasons that I entered the cannabis space was because I wanted to have a way to have more direct impact. And so for me, it's joyful to be able to see a business come up before our very eyes.
So you're a hands-on person.
I think that would be fair.
So you talked about two particular positions. You talk about being a consultant and an entrepreneur. And of the two, it sounds like you prefer to be the entrepreneur rather than the consultant.
I don't think I would say that so much. Dr. Leroy, don't put words in my mouth.
Well, the hands-on person is not necessarily the consultant, but the entrepreneur is the person that opens the door in the morning and closes the door in the evening. So I'm just trying to get a feel for where Christy Lee Kelly is, and maybe that will help others to maybe kind of get in touch with where they want to be in the business.
Fair enough. But I don't have a direct answer because I really do like aspects of being in this industry. Consulting gives you a front seat, in-depth opportunity to meet a number of different other entrepreneurs in a number of different markets and to really idea share with their teams who you presume are sort of the best of the best that they have been, that they have convened. And so there's a very different energy that comes on the consulting side, where people are bringing you in to provide your expertise and to provide your perspective and to identify and triangulate the issues that they're having that are preventing them from hitting whatever their, milestone is, and then developing a plan of action to get in there. You can get your hands dirty when you're doing that too. You can get into the bowels of the business that way, and it's delightful.
But I
doing
like
it from the ground up as an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
What you get is the consistency and the rigor of everyday every month, every year, really having that on the ground perspective, and it's you put more energy over an extended period of time in something like that. It's an investment in a longer term relationship, whereas consulting is like a fling, and both have wonderful advantages.
I love your analogies. That's absolutely marvelous. There's also something you said earlier that I hope that people will be listening to, which will cause them to kind of understand the fact that cannabis is a business like any other business. You talked about developing a business plan, and I would imagine that plan, like any other business, was like a guide to help you to look at how you set up the business, and then set goals that you achieve along the way, so that you know what you're doing and how you're doing. And if you're going to bring on any investors, or if you need investors, the first thing I think they're going to want to know is, what is your business plan, or do you have a business plan? So can you spend a few minutes talking about the value of a business plan in cannabis?
It doesn't matter what business you're entering, what industry you're trying to start in. If you want to be an entrepreneur and you have some sort of an idea that you're trying to bring to reality, it starts with a business plan. That's a fundamental. It is not only an essential document that provides strategic and operational clarity into what you're trying to do, but it's also the document that gives other parties the ability to say, okay, I get it. Here is a way that I can contribute, whether that is financial contributions vis-a-vis investors, or it's the other members of your team who perhaps have experience in other areas that you may not. Most entrepreneurs don't come with a fully cooked skill set to do this all by themselves. You have to rely on other people, whether those people are attorneys or finance, or financial or accounting professionals, whether they're operations people, retail people, cultivation, whatever the thing is. It comes with the ability to really take a document that is a blueprint and then make it stronger over time. That being said, I also encourage people not to be beholden to a document for the duration of its life, because this industry is growing and evolving. Your markets are evolving and growing, and you're going to learn, and technology is going to impact things, and all of those different factors are going to affect the way that you approach the business. For example, the example I gave earlier was our first business plan. We were supposed to be a cultivation-only business. The legal and regulatory environment demanded that we change our business model and accommodate vertical integration and add storefronts to our business plan. We can't be intractable to the requirements of what the market and our legal environment demand of us, right? But that could have also just as easily been an impact, because we realized that the fluctuations in a commodity like cannabis were difficult to weather unless we had the surety of retail storefronts from which our supply chain could be pushed out. And so regardless of what the impetus is for changing a business plan, there are plenty of reasons to do it. And so it is only the starting blueprint for how a company and a business can be successful. It doesn't, I would encourage periodic reviews of that business plan to ensure that the strategies and tactics that come out of it are consistent with what the reality is in front of you.
So I'm looking at where you are right now. You're in Michigan and you're opening up. Is this your own business, or are you a consulting person?
I'm part of the leadership team of this company. It's called Sozo. and we have a flagship base of operations in Warren, which is a top 3 city in Michigan by population, and it's where our cultivation operations are, as well as our processing facilities. And then we have 3 dispensaries that are currently in operations, and then 3 more that are in construction and scheduled for opening in first quarter of 2022. So that's kind of where we are today.
Great,
it's an
great.
exciting time.
So that what you did is you just told me that I need to come back and talk to you sometime in the first quarter of 2022, because then you'll have opened several more stores. So maybe as we get to the end of our discussion today, how would you suggest a person learn about the business? I think you made a reference to the fact that, reading this, when you started, there wasn't a lot of research on it, but today, right now, a person that wants to get into the business, what's the best way for them to figure out or find out if cannabis is something that they want to do, or the business of cannabis? How would they get themselves into it?
I have a couple of different ideas on how someone could potentially learn more about the industry and decide if it's a good fit. The first is very obvious to me, but I think a lot of people try to hopscotch it: get a job in the industry. And the reason I say that is because you would never look to open a business that produces eyeglasses if you didn't know how to produce eyeglasses. You would never start a manufacturing company if you didn't know how to manufacture that product. You typically start companies based upon some sort of a skill set that you have and an ability to do something and bring an idea to market that's needed, but maybe a little bit different, filling a void perhaps that someone else isn't filling. So why would you do it any differently in cannabis? Get a job in the vertical that you want to learn about and see what it's like from the inside out. The second thing I would encourage is, there's an abundance of courses and classes in higher education where you can get a real foundational knowledge about the area that you're looking for. There are cultivation programs now, out of botany programs and horticulture programs, throughout the United States. There are business of cannabis classes in, San Diego as well as UVA. In fact, I ran into a professor at UVA whose class I used to lecture when he started a business of cannabis program out of an MBA program in Denver, and he's carried that program over to the East Coast now. So there's an abundance of educational opportunities that you can look at. There are books, there are people, there are consultants, there are mentors. So get out there and figure out who's who and what's what. A lot of times the people who have some of the greatest knowledge are buried in the work. And so you have to go find them because there is a real interest, I think, in cultivating the next generation of cannabis talent and entrepreneurs. And in order for this industry to continue to grow and to thrive, people need to have the foundational knowledge, the tools, the skill set, and the mentorship, and the access to information in order to take this and continue to grow it and make it bigger and better and more efficient than what we have today, because that's what a growth industry is about. It's about, the ability to take a concept or an industry and then to realize exponential growth and progress in a very short period of time. We can't do that if we don't have an incoming, a consistent effort to expand the incoming entrepreneurs and workforce in the industry.
I tend to agree with you 110% that the experts are people that are in the field, and we have had the real pleasure and honor of talking with one of the experts in the field today, Christy Lee Kelly. Why don't I let you give a shameless plug for your current operation, because people that listen to the podcast are going to be all over the world. So, and undoubtedly all over the world means they'll be in Michigan too. So can you tell us again the name of your company, where you are right now?
Sure. I'm at Sozo. I'm coming to you from our flagship in Warren, Michigan, where we have our cultivation, processing, and retail operations here, and then throughout the state. Michigan is also a medical state with reciprocity. So if you have your medical card, you can come and use it at provisioning centers that are out here. I believe California is also a reciprocity state. So if you have your med card and go to California, I think that works for you too. And then, of course, if you're 21 and up and you want to come shopping, come try out Michigan. It's a great state. It's a beautiful state with gorgeous tourism opportunities and a really rich history with a lot of soul. So I'd love to see you. Look us up.
And if they're lucky, if they get there on a certain day, they will find Christy Lee Kelly busily working all around, helping customers and or giving directions. Correct?
What we're trying to do is help our employees realize the potential of cannabis as a career and not a job. And so we're really spending a lot of time with our teams to help with professional development and mentoring, to give skills that are not just going to help them be successful in the specific role that they have today, but that will help them grow and expand and stay with us, hopefully, in the future.
Yeah. Do you have a website for your company that you could share with the audience?
Sure. SozoLife.com.
SozoLife.com.
Sozo, S-O-Z-O. It's an ancient biblical term that means to heal and to make new and to renew, which is, I think, really right when we're talking about cannabis.
Oh my goodness, I've been working with you too long. You knew the next question I was going to ask. What does that mean? Fantastic, Christy. Listen, I want to thank you for being so gracious with your time. I know that every time I have called you and asked you to participate in the Cannabis Enlightened project, you have been more than willing to share. I appreciate you giving some of your time to share your wisdom in the business of cannabis with the audience. Thank you very much, and I look forward to talking with you very soon.
Thank you. And on the next episode of Cannabis Enlightened, hear Dr. Leroy learn about time zones.
Okay.
If you'd like to hear more Cannabis Enlightened with Dr. Leroy, be sure to visit us online at cannabisenlightened.com and subscribe wherever you download your podcasts. Cannabis Enlightened is produced in San Diego, California, and presented by March and Ash at marchandash.com. On behalf of Dr. Leroy, I'm Chris Cantori, and thank you for listening.
Do you have a business, nonprofit, or campaign that needs to break through the communications clutter? For over 10 years, IVC Media has developed a suite of digital tools, data sets, and creative techniques, all to help corporate, government, and nonprofit organizations like you deliver authentic, innovative, and effective communications. Our teams in San Diego and Tijuana can help you overcome the most challenging communications projects in any language or location